our friends are going to have the chapter of that book related to Islam. Anything in brief that anybody would like to share of that book, that what is his approach in general to Islamic faith, and how does Reverend Adam Hamilton look at Islam in general? Anyone read that book?
I just wrote a couple of things down that you and we believe that Jesus is Christ and the Messiah, which I was surprised at that. And you believe in the virgin birth and ascension, and you believe in the second coming. That I was surprised.
That's correct. That's correct. Right. No surprise. Surprise for you. You do it from this time, not for us.
And also, jihad is to strive for a better, more righteous life. That kind of definition has gone astray, I think.
Exactly. It is basically internal jihad means the internal struggle for purification of soul. That is the fundamental jihad. But the external struggle is applied to the defense aspect of the jihad, which is common sense. If you are under attack, you defend yourself and your family. So jihad is opposite of what we heard from Islamophobic propaganda, that jihad means terrorism and jihad means genocide and jihad means attacking Christians and Jews. None of this. Jihad, as a matter of fact, is an action to remove terrorism, to free people from fear and terrorism, is opposite. That is the act of jihad, to eliminate the roots of evil and aggression, and to promote freedom and justice. So jihad is for justice, and terrorism is against justice. So that is, I'm glad that Pastor Adam, and you are from the same denomination?
No.
The different denomination?
He's a United Methodist.
Oh, he is United Methodist, and your church is Presbyterian Church, right? I see. Okay. Yeah, I remember that at that time that the ISIS issue was raised. It was 2013, I think, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that we here at the House of Wisdom, we invited all the imams and mosque leaders to meet in front of the city hall, the old city hall, not the new one. They hadn't moved yet. And we had a big banner at that time, Muslims against ISIS. And we talk about that and the media and still online. But you know something so funny, that we used to say that ISIS ideology, theology, tradition, tactics, and even techniques, all provided by the Takfiri ideology, which is basically a Wahhabi Saudi concept. And recently, when you look at this Khashoggi situation, you see that he was killed and cut to pieces and destroyed the same way that ISIS used to do it. Remember how ISIS used to kill people? They did the same thing to Khashoggi. So that means that the Saudi regime is just like an ISIS regime. And they were providing ideology. They are the same ideology of the Takfiri. and also the treasure, and even the techniques of torture and terror, the same. And when we used to say that ISIS had nothing to do with Islam, as a political filth in this world, we had a hard time to convince anyone. But now it is very clear that it's amazing that the president, he says he's not even interested to listen to that audio tape. Can you imagine? He said, no reason I even listen. How can you say that, no reason? I mean, you are the president, you are responsible. You are saying there is no reason that they are so-called closest ally, and then they committed such a horrible, and says, but he told me that he didn't do it. Wow, so nice. He told you that. So what do you expect him to tell you, right? I mean, do you trust these guys? These are the same guys that the first day said that, well, he was there only for 50 minutes. He left the embassy after 50 minutes. You remember? They said that in the beginning. And they said, we don't know where he is. We are worried about that as well. And every day a new lie, every day a new propaganda, and it's almost a month and a half. Now we have a situation that even the CIA is saying that the prince was involved. I mean, how can in Saudi Arabia you send 15 people to embassy to kill someone and, cut it to pieces and, burn the bones, and nobody knows even where the body is now after almost 2 months? And you are saying that, well, and the CIA said, in that country, when you say, tell your boss the job was done, who is the boss over there? It's very obvious. Now he is listening to Ben Salman more than listening to CIA. It's interesting. So now we understand that we were victims. The Muslims were victims of ISIS. And the ISIS was supported by money, by military, by manpower, by the same guys who killed Khashoggi. And now our leaders are sending a horrible message to the world that the entire universe is laughing at us. That, are you serious? You are saying that he told me 5 times that he didn't do it. So even if he tell you 5 million times, would you agree? Would you really trust this guy? It is just, it is a very bad things is going on. Now it's saying, okay, well, I want to Tuesday to say what's going to happen. I mean, month and a half, 2 months is not enough for us to conclude, and now we are waiting for another day and another week and another month. So this is why the main problem is corruption. You see, corruption in politics, corruption in religion, corruption in morality, corruption in society, and it's amazing that the worst kind of corruption is, of course, religious corruption, right? It's the worst kind. There was an article in New York Times last week that somebody wrote, you can go online and say that, it says, Saudi misusing Mecca. If you type that, search for Google that, you can read the article. Just amazing that these guys are using the holiest place of Islam and calling themselves the servants of the noble sanctuaries. Because in Islam, Mecca Sacred Mosque and Medina Sacred Mosque are the holiest sites in Islam. And lots of Muslims, they respect the Saudi government because it's, oh, they are serving the shrines over there, and everybody makes a pilgrimage to Mecca. So they have some, they don't want to be tough on them just because of the holiness of the place. But then when they are using these sites to promote corruption and lies and propaganda, the imams that they are using this holy site, by the way, this is like what you see on this TV, is the Mecca holy site that we respect. We pray 5 times a day towards this mosque. And now, for example, is probably 4 or 5 a.m. over there, and people still they are worshiping, and it's 24 hours live show of the sacred mosque. And they are moving around the Kaaba now, as you see, they are doing circling the Kaaba, and they are doing the pilgrimage, and never stops. All hours of days and nights during the year, it never stops. This mosque is always full of pilgrims who do it. But then the imam of this mosque, just 1 week after the death of Khashoggi, he said that, look, the king and his son, they are divine gifts to humanity. And if you doubt them, if you disobey them, if you say anything, then you are enemy of Islam. And if you are enemy of Islam, that means that from their mentality, you cannot even exist, like you are enemy, like they deal with you like an enemy. So this extremism and religious corruption says no matter what the king does, even if the king go on TV and does adultery for half an hour on TV publicly every day, still you have to obey him. Can you imagine? If he does adultery half an hour publicly every day on TV and everybody is watching him, still you have no right to criticize the king. They are using religion, and it's the imam of this mosque who said that. So don't surprise that we have Pat Robertson among us, right? So that is another copy of Pat Robertson. You know, if you put Pat Robertson in that situation, he would say the same thing, because the same mentality. It's a religious corruption. How can you say that? Because this guy said that, well, you cannot, forget about Khashoggi, because we have a deal with Saudi Arabia. This is what Pat Robertson says. We have money. Forget about morality. We have deal, they are buying from us, they pay money to us. How possible a person of faith says, focus on money, forget about morality? This is total corruption. We have it in Islam, we have it in Christianity, we have it in Judaism. It's all over. The only good thing is that then we have you people, have us, like in this darkness of the night, you are shining like candles, shining candles, bringing some lights of love and lights of wisdom and lights of understanding, lights of brotherhood and sisterhood, lots of unity, lots of community. We need this light in the darkness of this night. If we cannot shine like a sun, but even a candle is better in this darkness than no candle. So now, I made a few notes about what you like to hear about Islam. Of course, in 1 hour we cannot go through all the theology from A to Z and explain everything. But the word Islam comes from the root of Salm. And Salm means peace. So Islam coming from salam or from salam. When we say salam, this is like a peace. That is the declaration of Muslims meeting each other, visiting each other. The first word is salam alaikum, peace be upon you. So Islam comes from this word salam, peace, peace be upon you. In a journey between people and God, between creator and creation, we have Islam as a message of peace in our relationship with God and in our relationship with people. Peaceful relationship with God, because some people are fighting even God, right? They want to practice peace even with the Lord. They declare war against the Lord. And also peace with people. And also another meaning of Islam means taslim, which means in relationship with God, total submission. Total submission. This is the meaning of, from dictionary point of view, meaning of Islam. Of course, there is so much ignorance about this religion. So, religion of peace, and some people make fun of that. They make fun of when you say religion. And this is out of their ignorance about our faith. And you know that ignorance is the cause of so many problems. Why some people are so extremist? Extremism, radicalism comes from ignorance. They are not balanced, right? They are extremists, they are radical because they are ignorant. And when ignorance comes, all other diseases, all other spiritual cancers come with that. All this mess, insanity, exclusion, talking about others, us and them, bigotry, prejudice, anti-Semitism, right? Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. You remember they declare Punish Muslim Day. Just last year they announced that they were propagating that let us dedicate one day to punish the Muslim. And they put like reward. They said, like, if you abuse a Muslim, you get that much credit. If you beat, you get that much. If you butcher, you get that much. If you burn, you get that much. If you bomb, that is, you get the total, credit by doing. They wrote it. Beating, burning, bombing.
Who declared this?
These some extremists, the non-Muslim extremists, they started from, I think from Britain, and then it went all over, and they were happy about that, and they were like in social media, they said, Muslim Punish Day, that was all over. So that is why this meeting is important. This kind of meeting is important because we need light in this darkness, in this ignorance. We need some light. And light starts from us. When Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs, who passed away a few years ago, he was the founder or co-founder of Apple, right? Apple is now, the value market of Apple is what? Got to $1 trillion, right?
Down today.
Yeah, down today. But not that much. It still is $1 trillion, right? Still a trillion. He was talking with the students before he died, and he was poor him, only 53 years old. And he said, he quoted somebody else telling a student, stay hungry, stay foolish. I don't know exactly what he meant, but stay hungry means hungry of knowledge and hungry of wisdom and hungry of truth and hungry of justice, right? And stay foolish, he didn't mean stay ignorant. He said foolish in a sense of sometimes we do courageous, compassionate things that people look at it as something foolish. But we are taking this risk of doing foolish things, and that works. Because at the time of the Prophet, they thought Jesus was foolish, right? When he was saying, they thought foolish. When Abraham said, they thought Abraham was foolish. They thought Moses was foolish. They thought Muhammad was foolish. And if they were foolish, we want to be foolish too, right? I mean, it's good to be foolish. And I think that is exactly what Steve Jobs meant when he said that. That, you know, you do certain things that a lot of people, they think is foolish. But you know that that is wisdom. So Islam in general comes from peace. One of the names of God, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam wa laka salam wa ilayka ya'udu salam. You are the source of peace. Peace coming from you, returns to you. No meaning for peace without you. With your peace in our heart, we feel life, peace of heart. Everything is coming from you. And then there is a verse in chapter 4, verse 94, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ أَلْغَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامِ لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا. Quran is telling us, when someone comes and suggests peace, even if you're enemy, don't say, no, 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 I don't want peace, you are my enemy, and don't reject peace. No matter who suggests, you always welcome the sense of peace, the absence of war, the absence of violence. That is peace. So Islam, religion of peace, means in this ideology, war and violence and terrorism have no place originally. That is the meaning. When we go to the saying of Prophet Muhammad, he said, when he defines a Muslim, he said, Al-Muslimu man salima al-Muslimun man salima al-nas min yadihi wa lisanih. That means that the real definition of a true Muslim is that if people are safe from your expressions and from your actions, then you are Muslim. That you provide safety and security to people through your tongue and your actions. If people are hurt with your tongue, if people are hurt with your deeds, then you are not a Muslim. So when we say religion of peace, he explained it that way. Then we go to the Quran, the book that is considered as a miracle of Prophet Muhammad. And you know that Muhammad was orphan. When he was born, as a matter of fact, his father had already died. His mom died when he was only 6 years old. And he was with his grandfather. And grandfather died when he was 8 years old. Really a homeless, orphan, poor person. Never went to any school. Because first of all, school didn't exist in Arabia then, right? There was no school in Mecca. No college, no university, no elementary school, nothing.
No internet.
No internet for sure. No
search engine, no Google.
you couldn't Google anything, right? Yes, coming, yeah, very welcome, very welcome. So Mary is also a member of our Interfaith Committee, and we are honored to have her and her husband. They together they are joining us. So it's a miracle that this man who was orphan, homeless, brought a book. And this is why the Quran is a miracle, that how come you never went in a school? No one claimed that, Muhammad came to my class and I taught him. No one claimed such a thing, right? And he lived in Mecca 53 years of his life. The last 10 years he lived in Medina. For 53 years he lived in Mecca. So no one claimed to be his teacher. but still he brings a book. The Quran that you see here, more than 6,000 verses, and it is exactly the same verses which were revealed to the Prophet. No change. Nobody claimed you can see this Quran here, go anywhere in any library in the world and take the Quran in Arabic. I'm not talking about the translation in English, because translation is something different. But we trust the original, which is Arabic. And it's the same Quran. You take and you compare this Quran with the Quran in a museum, for example, 700 years ago, is the same Quran. It's really what we are talking as a miracle of this man. Now, what is the subject of this book? And by the way, the Quran challenges the opposition, those who said that, well, you know, we can do the same thing, it's not a big deal, we can write a book. And it says, okay, if you can bring a book like this, a copy, the same copy. In another challenge says, forget about the whole book, bring me just 10 chapters. People were still silent. Another challenge, bring me just one short chapter that's similar to this book in the quality, in the content, in the beauty of the terms and wording. And no one ever in the last 1400 years ever claimed that, well, we produce a book just like the Quran. What is the main subject of this book? The word Allah is mentioned in the Quran 2,700 times. And this is really the main subject of this book, Allah, which is God in English, right? I mean, Allah is the Arabic translation, like say Jehovah or Yehovah, right? Or Father or Maker, Creator. In Arabic, they say Allah. So even for Christians, like you go to Lebanon or in Iraq, in Egypt, they say Allah. The Christians, they say Allah. That is God is in English, because people here think, oh, Allah, they think, what is Allah? I mean, you think that everybody in the world speak English? God is just the English word for the Creator, right? So Allah is the Arabic. So the fundamental feature of the Quran is God, the Creator. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. God is the light of heavens and the earth. Khaliq samawati wal ard. He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. And then قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. The identity of God in the Quran is that God is one. Allahu Samad. He is absolute. He is eternal. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. That it is the identity of God. His name is mentioned in the Quran 19 by other qualities. Allah is mentioned 2,700. But then God had other names, other beautiful names that 99 of them mentioned in the Quran. This is really the main subject. If you go to chapter 59, verse 22, there are in that one or two verses, as a matter of fact, 18 to 20 names of God mentioned in those two verses altogether. But if you go through the entire Quran, you find other names that He is loving, He is great, He is glorious, and He is merciful, He is compassionate, He is forgiving, and so on and so forth. There are 99 of these names. So the main subject of the Quran is God, the Creator. Another most important subject in the Quran is resurrection, the day of judgment, which is Al-Qiyama, Al-Din. That we believe that at the end we are going to be raised in the presence of the Lord after this material and worldly life. There will be a day of resurrection. That 1,200 verses in the Quran are dedicated to the day of resurrection. 1,200 verses in the Quran. Talking about reward, talking about punishment, talking about heaven and hell, talking about all these details of the day of resurrection in 1,200 verses. Of course, these are scattered all over the Quran. You don't find that 1,200 verses just in one chapter or next to each other, but it's all over the chapters that you can find this. The third subject, which is very fundamental in Quran, is Al-Nobowa, means the light of prophethood, the prophets. And that's very important to know that 25 prophets are mentioned by name in the Quran. There are much more than that, but 25 of them are mentioned by name. And there is, as a matter of fact, a verse that if you want to just for a little bit waking up of the meeting, if you open the Quran and you go to page 438, page 438,
This is yours.
yeah, on page 438, on the bottom of the page is verse 13. If you see the number of those lines, the number of the verses, did you find 13 there? 1, 3? 1, 3. Anybody volunteer to read that for us? Yeah, you want to just read it? You have it?
Sure. He has plainly clarified the religion which is revealed to you, and that which Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus were commanded to follow. He has explained it, so that you will learn the laws of the religion and remain united about the issues therein. What you call the pagans to is extremely grave for them. Allah attracts to the religion whomever He wants and guides to it, whoever turns to Him in repentance.
Very good, thank you. You see that in this verse, out of those 25 prophets that are mentioned by name in the Quran, here we have 5 of them in this verse, like Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad himself. 5 of them are Ulul Azm, means they are the highest prophets and the highest messengers of God. That out of those 25 and 25 out of thousands of other prophets that God sent, these 5 are distinguished as Ulul Azm, means the prophet of determination, the universal, the one that they had universal mission and universal message, and they were for the entire humanity. These are 5 of them that mentioned. Now, if you want to go to page 122, page 122, and if you can find verse 83, 83.
Which surah?
That is chapter 6. Chapter 6, yes. Chapter 6. That is verse 83. Anybody find 83? You found it? You found it? You want to read it?
Such was the authoritative reasoning that we gave Abraham over his people, to raise whomever we want to a higher rank. Your Lord is all wise and all knowing.
I see. Okay, this is about Abraham, though, right? So I'm looking for a verse actually that it mentioned
Oh, praise the Lord.
those, the name of more prophets.
Praise the Lord.
Is that this? Can you continue, please?
You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. We gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Both have received our guidance. Noah received our guidance before Abraham, and so did his descendants, David, Solomon, Job, Joseph, Moses, and Aaron. Thus is the reward for the righteous people.
Thank you. You see, there are 18 messengers are mentioned in these 2-3 verses. So out of those 25 that we are talking about, 18 of them are just mentioned here, that the Quran recognize all of those, you know, the messengers to the community of Israel, the children of Israel. All these prophets are recognized in the Quran, 25, and of course Prophet Muhammad himself. If we go through these verses, is telling us that Islamic religion is the continuity of religion of Abraham. So we are Millatu Ibrahim. That is in chapter 23, verse 78. It says that Millatu Abikum Ibrahim huwa sammakum al-Muslimin min qabl. Means that Abraham called us Muslims. So the title of Islam and Muslims is a title that Abraham chose because he submitted himself to God. So he was Muslim. Abraham was Muslim in a sense of submitting himself to God. So in this sense, all of you are Muslims because you submit yourself to God, right? All of us. We can say even the nature is Muslims because all these trees and all these, you know, planets, they submit to God. So that is a natural Islam, it's a natural submission to the will of God. So this is the continuity of the religion that Abraham himself, he submitted his soul to the Lord. And we're supposed to follow Abraham. And we are the children of Abraham. I mean, as children of Abraham, that there is a verse in the Quran, it says that when you submit your soul to the Lord, and you are muhsin, you are a person of kindness, وَاتَّبَعَ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا, and you follow the vision, the path of Abraham, and you realize that Abraham was friend of God. اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. Abraham was a friend of God. So we can be friends of God as well, if we follow the path of Abraham. So you see that Islam is not really something strange that people, they think, oh, Islam like something foreign to America and foreign entity. As a matter of fact, no religion is closer to Christianity than Islam. Because, you know, who else recognizes Jesus except in Islam, right? I mean, even if you go to Jews, they say, oh, Jesus was a Jewish, right? I mean, that's the maximum, you know, kindness that they show to Jesus, right? That he was a good Jewish guy. And then that's the maximum recognition that Jesus gets in Jewish faith. You go to any other religion, they don't even recognize Jesus, right? The only religion that does recognize Jesus and honors Jesus not 1 time and 10 times and 20 times, 70 times in the Quran, Jesus and his mom Mary, are honored. So that is the closest you can go. And not only that, to consider that Jesus was the Spirit of God, he was messenger of God, he was the voice of God, Kalimatullah, the voice of God, the servant of God, and so many other titles that were, and as a matter of fact, Maryam, there is a chapter 19 is chapter of Mary. It's a very beautiful chapter that talks about the story of Jesus. And you know that the Mary is the only woman mentioned in the Quran by name. There are so many other ladies that Quran talks about them, like Eve, like says the wife of Adam, but doesn't mention the name, right? Or for example, it says the mom of Moses, doesn't mention the name. What is her name? The only lady mentioned by name is Mary. And guess what? How many times? 25 times the Quran says Maryam, 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 all over the book. So, but the ignorance and Islamophobia, that they don't know about all of these things, they think that Islam is the problem, Islam is a threat, Islam is a danger, Islam is enemy. But if they really knew, if they were not ignorant, they would say, no, Islam is not a problem, Islam is a solution. Islam is not an enemy, Islam is our friend. Islam is not a danger, Islam is a blessing. But when people are ignorant, so what do you expect? So when we go through all these verses about the prophets, and as a matter of fact, we had a conference that Dr. Mary, her name is also Mary, that we had an Interfaith Conference. When was it? Like 4 or 5 months ago?
Last March.
Last March, was it? In a church?
End of February. I think it was end of February at Sacred
End
Park.
of February, right?
And I don't know if any of you attended, but it was a very, very, very good conference.
And that was about the prophets. You know, that what Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, what do we say about the prophet? That we know in general, all of them, they invite to faith and a spiritual submission to God. All talk about prayer, about worship. All they share the message of God with humanity. All stood for justice, for human integrity. All stood for truth. All rejected injustice and oppression and evil, hypocrisy, corruption. So there are so many similarities that exist among all these prophets. Any questions so far? Or any comments? Yes.
I was curious, you believe in the resurrection. Prior to the resurrection, when someone in your faith dies, what happens to his soul, his spirit, himself?
Well, we believe that, of course, death is separation of soul and body, right?
Correct.
And the body goes to the cemetery, and that means nothing. That is not even our real grave, because the real grave for our soul is in the spiritual kingdom, in the kingdom of God. That we don't know the details, but we know that much, that from now till the day of resurrection, the final resurrection, there's going to be a temporary situation for the soul that we call it Alamul Barzakh. That is a waiting period
Purgatory.
before the
Purgatory.
yes, before the final judgment. And when the final judgment comes, based on the Quran, we believe that again it's going to be reconciliation and meeting between the soul and the body. Somehow with God's order, which is nothing impossible for Him, our body is going to be collected, and the soul goes back to the body, and then we are resurrected in the presence of the Lord, and that is the final judgment, and that is the day of accountability and day of those people who escape from the courts of the world or the courts of the conscience. Now they are facing the court of the Creator over there. And that is the final, that they cannot lie. It's not that say, oh, it's not like Trump to change it anymore, right? You cannot change it over there, right? When you face God, you can't lie anymore. So that's it, because that is the time of truth. The moment of truth is the moment of the judgment. Yes.
I just want to do one comment, which is most of our Christian friends, they have a lot of questions because there is a lot of misinformation going out there, and it's better if we answer those questions more than what things they can find by themselves by going to Google. And then I want to go back to the jihad. And jihad is, yes, what you said is correct, but those misuse of jihad didn't start with ISIS. We shouldn't be just telling them that it just started with ISIS or with Al-Qaeda. We are actually very proud, and we know why people actually misuse jihad. So we have to go back to what's the definition of jihad. According to the Prophet, jihad, there is two types of jihad. There is the major jihad and there is the lesser jihad. The major jihad is the struggle against evil. This is about you, your greed, your lust, and that's actually very tough. And the lesser jihad is the struggle against, not like the ISIS said, infidels. No, it's against transgressor, somebody who does harm. And he doesn't have to be, he could be even Muslim. Even a Muslim, if he transgress and he attack others, then we have to do jihad against him. And in fact, the Prophet, when he was doing jihad, the lesser jihad in Medina, Christian was actually fighting with him against his family on the other side.
Very good.
We read
Yeah.
that.
So it's like,
Right.
So it's
I think you are actually echoing what I said originally.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
That jihad has an internal aspect, which is purification of soul, an external part, which is against terrorism and against injustice. And thank you for the comment. So we talk about the main subjects in the Quran. Number one was God himself, 2,700 verses about God. Number two was the day of resurrection, 1,200 verses in the Quran about the day of resurrection. And the third subject is the prophets, the Anbiya, the messengers. Are you okay?
As long as I can stand up for a
Oh,
while.
feel free, please. It's your house here. It's House of Wisdom, is House of Woman, House of Wisdom. So then we move to prophethood, from the light of God to the light of the prophets. So first establishing relationship with God, and then we establish his relationship with God through the prophets, like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and these heavenly lights. And then there are so many verses about Prophet Muhammad himself in the Quran. Though something so ironic that the other prophets mentioned in the Quran even more than Prophet Muhammad himself. Like, for example, Abraham almost 70 times mentioned, Moses 135 times, and Jesus and Mary, as I said, again 70 times. But Prophet Muhammad mentioned in the Quran only 5 times. It's surprised that Prophet by name Muhammad mentioned in the Quran only 5 times. Of course, he is mentioned by the titles more than that, or Messenger of God or Prophet of God, but the name of Muhammad is only 5 times in the Quran.
Maulana 4 times and Ahmad 1 time.
But the Surah Muhammad, if you look at one chapter is Muhammad, then it becomes 5 times, right? With the name of the Surah. It's interesting that you have heard about Michael Hart, who passed away just a few years ago. He wrote the book, The 100. And he was talking about 100 most influential leaders in human history. And he put Prophet Muhammad number 1 in his book. So Michael Hart, it's good, available online if you look. Then he explained, he said, my choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others. I mean, Michael Hart himself was a Christian scholar. He used to live in New York. So he is a Christian, and he wrote this book, and he said, you might be surprised that how come a Christian scholar chose Muhammad to be number 1, and even he put Jesus number 3, and then he goes and said, how come? You might be surprised. He said, he was the only man in history who was successful in a supreme way on both the religious and secular level. The influence of Prophet Muhammad, not only in the spiritual way, but also in the real life, administration life of the people, he said that supremely successful, both in the spiritual and. But then you go to somebody like Jerry Falwell and Billy Graham, right? And many others, they say, oh, this man was wicked, he was violent, Muhammad was a terrorist. And you know, they have to answer their Lord. Now, Jerry Falwell is not there anymore. Billy Graham passed away just this year or last year. So they have to really be responsible in the court of God that when you say that Muhammad was wicked or Islam is evil, I mean, based on what you said that, did you read? Did you get real information? This is why you, brothers and sisters, you are in the right time and right place tonight. You came to learn about Islamic religion in the right place. Instead of hearing from Fox News and some others, you came to hear from the Quran and from a mainstream mosque, a moderate mosque, a balanced place. You learn. The Prophet Muhammad, even before, he became prophet when he was 40 years old, by the way. In the last 40 years of his life, even the pagans who had no religion in Mecca, they used to say, As-Sadiqul Amin, means prophet is truthful and trustworthy. Even before his prophet. Anytime that they had a problem in the community, they trusted Muhammad because they knew that he was honest. And they left the judgment for him. And when it comes to his morality, they asked him that, can you describe the highest morality for us? He said, the highest level of morality summarized in three things. And ta'fu amman dhalamak, if somebody hurt you, persecute you, pardon that person, forgive that person. وَأَن تُعْتِ مَنْ حَرَمَكَ, somebody deprive you, you give him, you give her. وَتَسَلُ مَنْ قَطَعَكَ, somebody cut ties with you, you connect and you associate. These are the highest level. For this reason, the Quran says that Prophet Muhammad was rahmatan lil alameen. He was a mercy for mankind. 750 verses in the Quran is about morality, moral and ethical issues, that our world suffer from the absence of morality and moral values and moral principles. You remember years back, even especially the Republican Party, they were talking about family values. You remember how many times you used to hear every day family values, and they used to win the election based on family values. Now we don't hear those words of family values anymore. How many times we hear about family values? It's just talking about war and sanction and going to other countries and killing other guys. It's just horrible. What happened to family values and the values of the faith? And it's interesting that also 750 verses in the Quran is about reflection, knowledge. The best community is قَوْمٌ يَعْقِلُونَ, those who rationalize. قَوْمٌ يَعْلَمُونَ, the community of knowledge. قَوْمٌ يَفْقَهُونَ, community of understanding. قَوْمٌ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, community of reflection. قَوْمٌ يَسْمَعُونَ, a community that they listen. Our politicians, they don't want to even listen. So I don't want to even listen. At least listen. قَوْمٌ يَذْكُرُونَ, those who remember. 750 verses in the Quran about just think. Wow. The Prophet said 1 hour of reflection better than 70 years of supplication. Wow. Because somebody may live the entire life, 70 years, 80 years of just prayer and prayer and prayer, but nothing over there, no reflection. He doesn't even know whom he prays to or whom she prays to. Reflection is totally important. The fast part, I don't want to make it too long, is because the Pastor Phillips told me we are till 8:30, so we are done by hopefully before 8:30. The last thing is the Prophet Muhammad as an interfaith. For Prophet Muhammad, interfaith, and Quran, by the way, is an interfaith book. Quran is an interfaith book. Quran is a book of dialogue. In chapter 2, verse 257 says, La ikrah fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. You cannot force somebody to accept a faith. Can you force somebody to love you? Right? You can force somebody to love you, right? I tried, it didn't work, right? You cannot force anybody to love you, so, no, I'm joking, you know, everybody loves me and I love everybody, so, but you cannot force anybody to love you. The same thing, you cannot force somebody to believe in God. If somebody doesn't, what Thomas Jefferson said, he said, I believe in one God. Now you believe in 3 gods? Okay, you believe in 3 gods. Somebody believes in 20 gods. I'm not going to come and fight with you because you believe in 20 gods. But I'm there to protect your freedom so you can practice your religion freely. I don't know what did we do wrong that from Thomas Jefferson we ended up in Trump, right? What did we do wrong? By the way, I'm not Republican, no Democrat. I'm talking from religious language. So please, don't be. Some of you are Republicans, some of you are Democrats. So that is our freedom. Feel free. I'm not against parties. So there is no force in faith. Another verse in chapter 18, verse 29 says, قُلِ الْحَقَّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. O Prophet, you tell the truth. Now somebody believes you, somebody doesn't, up to them. Leave them alone, don't force them. Your duty, just explain what is right and what is wrong. I wonder if you know that there is another verse in chapter 22, verse 41. Quran says that all places of worship must be protected. And it mentioned the churches, the synagogues, the mosque, the temples, the places of worship. That means my duty as a Muslim is to protect churches, to protect synagogues, because they are places of worship, places of prayer. And we all pray to the same God. Because they say, oh no, our God is different from God of Muslims. So you believe that there is more than one God, that Muslims have their own God, and Christians, they have their own God, and Jews have their... How many gods are there then? There is only one Creator and one Lord. We mention the different names. You call him Father, I call him Allah, somebody call him Jehovah, sometimes call Jehovah. But it's just, we in Farsi we say Khuda, so it's just different names. And we worship in different places. But the light is the same, the light of God is the same. Now we have different buildings and we separate the light. If you remove the buildings, the light is the same light, right? We may put the different lenses and we get different colors. But without lenses, the light is light, the same color. That is what God is about. And that is what Rumi said. If you have heard about Rumi, that is a Persian poet called Rumi. He says that this is the light, the Spirit of God. And when it comes to, he says that the dogs and wolves, their souls are separated because they are animals. They are just attacking each other, cats and dogs. But when it comes to the faithful, the souls of the lions of the Lord are united. There should be a difference between human beings and the faithful and the dogs and wolves. They are separated. But we should have the same soul. And our soul, it should be united. So, in this case, that churches Synagogues, they are protected. And our duty as Muslim is just to protect all places of worship. Regarding Christians and Jews, there is another verse in chapter 3, verse 64 that Ahl al-Kitab, Quran calls you guys Ahl al-Kitab, means people who have book. How many times I say, oh, Muslims say you are pagans and all pagans should become. The Quran never calls Jews and Christians pagans because they are not pagans, they worship God. So, what is the title? Ahlul Kitab. We call you people of the book. And book means wisdom. So people of wisdom. The Quran says, oh, people of book. And that is chapter 2, verse 62. Is that, that is chapter 3, verse 64. That let us, all of us, Muslims, Jews, Christian, Abrahamic tradition, let us, all of us, celebrate the central similarity that we all share, and that is faith in one God. If we decide to worship only one God, because now God is not worshipped in our world. Money is worshipped and might is worshipped and, not God. And sometimes we worship our own greed, when we worship our own egos, and the idol of ego is not Allah, but is the ego that sometimes some people worship. It says, if you can drop all of these idols and worship only God, one God, that unites us. That unites us. So we need to just have this dialogue, that we just talk to each other, dialogue, and communicate. There is another amazing verse in chapter 2, verse 62, is saying that people of Jewish faith, Christian faith, and Zoroastrian faith, if you have faith in God and the day of judgment, and you do righteous deeds, then don't worry. Don't have fear. You are okay. Although technically we believe that when Jesus came, everybody had to become Christian, right? All of these people who were following Moses, by the appearance of Jesus, is the new message. Everybody follow Jesus. When Muhammad came, everybody has to follow him because he has the new message now. It's the same continuity, but he brings something new in the message. Is a new version. Like we have computers, new version every time. The religion, the final version was with Prophet Muhammad. So technically, then the followers of the previous messengers should follow the new leader. But despite of that, the Quran says, finally says that if you are faithful, whether you are Christian, whether you are Jewish or Zoroastrian, if you believe in God and righteous deeds, then don't worry, don't have fear and sadness in your heart. You are okay. Those Islamophobic people, they don't recite these verses. They bring different verses that is talking about something else and somebody else and some another time and another place, and they apply it to us. The same thing in Christianity. I don't hear so many times the preachers talk about the sermon of Jesus on the Mount, right? That he said that the blessed are the peacemakers, right? The righteous, the pious, they are the blessed. And when he says, love your neighbors, he said, even love your enemies. This is what Jesus loved, even your enemies. So where are some of these Christians with the message of Jesus that love your neighbors, and then what we see in reality and what we see in action? So I was listening to a lecture from Pastor Mark Harris, the pastor who was elected now, he went to the Congress, right? He's very radical in Christian. I don't know which denomination he is, but I mean, I never heard him talking about like the Mount service of Jesus' sermon on the Mount, or these loving verses in the Bible. I heard a couple of lectures from him. He's talking about, you know, there was something, the beast is coming, and the beast has like 7 heads, and every head has 7 horns, and every horn has 7 crowns. I don't know if that is a Bible. Even if it is a Bible, I don't know the meaning of that verse, right? But now you forgot all of these loving verses in the Bible, and you are talking about something scary, a beast with all these horns and all these heads and all of these things, and you are scaring people. I mean, what is going on? Unfortunately, this guy now, he went to the Congress. Can you imagine that? He said the only way to make peace in Jerusalem is for all Muslim and Jews to convert to Christianity, right? But what Christianity? I don't think he's talking about your Christianity either, right? I mean, I don't know if we consider all the Catholics and, you know, Presbyterian and all of this. Even when he talks about Christianity, he's talking about his own version of Christianity, which is very limited. That is not Christianity of Jesus, which is full of love and passion and truth and justice and care for humanity. That is something totally different. So, but you know, this is America. What do you, I mean, God bless America. I mean, this this guy now is the Congress. But you know, something that we should be proud of our country, despite of all this mess, is that in the same election, we had this lady Elhan. Did you hear from Minnesota? This lady, she is woman, she is black, she is a refugee, and she is coming from Somalia. And she won for the Congress from an area that majority are white and Christian. And they voted for her. That is good for her, them and good for her, right? And good for all of us, because this sends a beautiful message to the world that how beautiful America is, how blessing America, right? I mean, this is the message that we want to send to the world. Not those crazy messages that is like horrible and like negative and insane, totally insane. And liar. No, this is bless America and beauty of America related to this. And the only way that we can promote this message of America, because now our politicians, they are sending message to the world that don't trust us, don't respect us. We are not trustworthy. We don't respect our agreement. We don't keep our words. It's a very dangerous message to send to the world, isn't it? Instead of, you know, trust us. When we say something, we honor our words. When we sign something, we honor our signature. Trust us. We are not lying to you. We want to send the right message to the world. And I think through this dialogue and this exchange, we can do that. And I think that it is beautiful that, you know, that Michigan, we as the citizens of this state, Islam is part of our family, Christianity is part of our family. If you read the book read by Sally Howell, she's a professor I think in Ann Arbor University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. She wrote a book, Old Islam in Detroit. She wrote it a few years back. And she is talking about the first mosque was built in Highland Park in 1921. So that means almost 100 years ago, we had a mosque here in Michigan. And recently I had a meeting with, I don't know if you know Dr. Ron Stockton. He is a professor in UM Dearborn here. He did something so interesting. He brought me a report that this professor has gone to the cemeteries in Michigan and identified over 1,000 Muslim grave sites. And he took pictures of all these markers. And he studied the Muslims in Michigan, And he is saying that the presence of Muslim in Michigan is started from late 80s, like almost more than 200 years ago. So that is the neighborhood of Muslim in Michigan, that how long, and he does it based on the graves, that, you know, he read the dates on the grave and, you know, studies, and by the way, he came to the conclusion how much diversity among the Muslims, because people think Muslim is one thing. Muslim, different cultures, different nationalities, different colors, different, or some people think that the Muslim is only Arab. You know, do you know that the Arabs are minority in the Muslim world? Did you know that? The majority of Muslims are not Arabs. The Arabs are a minority. And it's interesting that here, even in United States, we have many Christian Arab communities more than even Muslim communities. They are Arabs, but they are Christians. They have their churches, they speak in Arabic, their sermons of their preachers are in Arabic. So what people don't know, that misunderstanding, so there is so much diversity, and even Muslims who are like very similar, even in Dearborn, very much our children are influenced, like your children, with the culture of this country. I mean now about Halloween and, you know, Valentine's Day and Thanksgiving, Christmas, the commercial aspect of these religious ceremonies influence our culture, which is not religious really. But, you know, Muslims are just like non-Muslims. We are on the same page when it comes to the influence of secular culture among our children, our families. And this is, we have drugs and alcohol and depression and, you know, suicide, and it's all over. And this shows that we have also the same challenges that we need to work together, that how we can deal with these challenges and the dangers that, as I said, the religious corruption and religious extremism a threat to everyone, whether it is in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. I was listening to this lady, Janet Reitman, if you have heard her name, and she wrote an article in New York Magazine, and she's talking about the danger of white nationalism. White nationalism, she's talking about that, you know, all of this violence, you don't hear about the religion, by the way. Do you know that this year, so far, 2018, how many cases of gun violence we had in the United States so far? 47,000 cases of gun violence. You never hear about the religion of those gunmen because they are not Muslims. Believe me, if any of them are Muslims, you hear about their grandpa and grandma and generation after generation to connect it to Prophet Muhammad and somehow to Allah, because of this prejudice, this Islamophobia, things against Islam. But none of other cases. This guy who killed his pregnant wife and 2 kids, and today they put him in sentence, right? Life sentence. This guy never they talk about his religion. Did you hear about it? I mean, no, he is Christian. I mean, it's obvious, right? But nobody talks of course, he's not a true Christian, right? If somebody is true Christian, would never kills anybody, and especially his wife, a pregnant wife with 2 kids. No heart, no soul, no brain. That is horrible. That's stupidity. But the point is that Janet Reitman, is saying that more than 70 cases of violence and terrorism committed by those white supremacy groups and those radical. And something, my sister's brother, very dangerous, that she is saying that 10% of American population, they okay this white nationalism. 10% of population, you are talking about tens of millions of people in America, that they think that these guys, that these extremists, they are right. That means that when they send bombs to President Obama, or the 15 bombs when they send, or when they attack this Tree of Life synagogue, same guys, they attack the synagogue, right? 10% of population, somehow they okay this ideology. And that's very dangerous for us. So I think that is our duty as Muslims, as Christians, as Jews, that we get together, continue our dialogue, continue our friendship, and stand together against extremism in any form, whether it's religious, whether it's political, whether it's a cultural. Extremism is very, very dangerous. It is time to do a tawbah, time to repent and say, God, we are sorry, we made so many mistakes. We want to repent to you, and we want to get back and work together as people of faith, or at least as human beings, to be a good human. It's, you know, that Steve Jobs said that there is a difference between human beings and being a human. There is a difference. So to being a human, that is our challenge, and that's what we are doing, and we do it through our prayer. There are 4 fundamental forms of worship in Islam. Is our daily prayer, our fasting during the month of Ramadan, our charity, and also pilgrimage to Mecca. I stopped going to Mecca. I am hoping that these Saudi rulers are gone, then I can go relaxedly and do my pilgrimage over there. At this time, it's dangerous to, you know, to see these guys over there. But prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage. We do it in Islamic way, and you do it in Christianity in different way. You have prayer, you have charity, you have kind of fasting, don't you? Kind of fasting during the year, and finally pilgrimage. You go to Jerusalem maybe for pilgrimage. Do you? Do you ever go to like any form of pilgrimage? You have anything that visitation of any shrine or like a sacred places in your denomination? But there are, I think, more Catholics. They have this tradition. But the point is that the concepts are very similar. I mean, the concept of faith. We pray in different languages, in different places, but the point is that we all pray for God. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your presence here this evening and for your patience to the House of Wisdom.
We have
God
one
bless
more.
you and
We have one more
your
gift.
congregations and your pastor, Pastor Mark Phillips. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.